Viewing the earth also demonstrates the power and the energy that's in God's creation, the part of God's creation we call Earth. Here's a erupting volcano. It was one of the Aleutian Islands in 2006, May 2006. It had just started. You can tell that because the plume is entirely in view here. We came around 90 minutes later and the plume was gone. It was done. It's a long story. It's in my book if you're interested. I don't have time today to tell it, but I figured that God caused that eruption just for me to meet a provision that I needed on that day, because as far as I know, I'm the only person on or off the planet that saw that particular eruption. Other dynamic events that invoke our awe and wonder and terror in many examples. This is a hurricane. This one did not hit landfall. It stayed in the Atlantic Ocean, but a hurricane nonetheless. Sandstorms from space are amazing. You see them in the Sahara Desert. You see them elsewhere. This particular picture was in the country of Kazakhstan, in the eastern part of Kazakhstan, where for some reason the patterns of the wind pick up sand and cause these tremendous, huge dust clouds. And we've seen reports about sandstorms, perhaps, and we've perhaps experienced them in different parts of the western U.S. This one's a little closer to your home. Fires, of course, occur seasonally or otherwise in different parts of the country. And this is a little bit north of us here, north of the LA area. In fact, just to the right of the screen here, the right side, you can see Edwards Air Force Base, the lake beds out there. That was called the Day Fire in September 2006. Just to the right of the plume there from the fire is Castaic Lake, if you're familiar with that area. So not too far away up north. Just another example of the power that you can see, the dynamic events that you can see on the earth from Earth. Sand dunes also became a favorite thing of mine to look at, and I love them because of the order. They really demonstrate the order in God's creation. Growing up, I loved mathematics, and when I went through college and whatnot, I grew to love that even more, the subject of mathematics, because you could so precisely predict how something would operate or function or the motion would occur mathematically. You could predict how a baseball would go if you threw it in a certain direction, a certain velocity, predict where it landed, and it landed there. It's very predictable and repeatable. And you can see that in things like sand dunes, with what the wind does with dunes. This may not be obvious here, but there's a pattern here. There's a large-scale pattern and a smaller-scale pattern that you see in the dunes. Here's another one, a little bit more obvious. This one is in the country of Namibia in southwest Africa. Those dunes there that are casting those shadows on the left-hand side are about 1,000 feet tall, is what I'm told. So these are big dunes, but you can see the pattern there, the repeated pattern. These dunes are in Mongolia, and you can see what looks like lakes. They are lakes, according to my research. The water tables there are very high. Again, though, if you look in the detail, you can see pattern, large-scale pattern and small-scale pattern. This one perhaps is a little bit more obvious to you. Here you see actually crisscross. And if you look close, you can see large-scale and small-scale pattern in the dunes. This is somewhere in the Sahara Desert. I don't remember exactly. But this one really jumped out at me because this is mathematical. This we can relate to our old math class that we had in school. Again, demonstrating the order and laws of physics, laws of nature that we find in God's creation. Directly related to mathematics, I already mentioned that. Some of you may not be able to relate to that, but I'll tell you another analogy. It's directly related to music. We understand music, we understand harmony, we understand chords and all that. That is directly related to what I'm talking about and demonstrates the order in God's creation. That order is also related to purpose. It's also related to his sustaining power. He's not only the creator, he is the sustainer of the creation. We know from Scripture, and I'll read a passage later, that he upholds the world by the word of his power, right? He upholds creation by the word of his power. Without his sustaining, continuous power, creation and we would cease to exist. God's creation is not only beautiful and ordered, but it's also functional. We heard this verse earlier today. From Isaiah 45, He is the God who formed the earth and made it. He established it not to create a waste place, but formed it to be inhabited. Our earth was purposely designed and positioned for life, and life was purposely designed to fill it. In this picture here, you see also the order in the cloud, the rows of clouds, if you will. Here, this is in the Midwest. Behind those clouds, you can see agriculture. You might be able to pick out the irrigation circles, and I apologize. I think we're getting sunlight on the screen, aren't we? Or some reflection. Is that washing it out? Behind the clouds, we can see the agricultural patterns of the Midwest. Genesis 1, we know this verse very well. And God blessed them, and God said to them, "Be fruitful and multiply and fill the earth and subdue it and have dominion over every living thing." To support that commission that He gave mankind in Genesis, as well as for His purpose, we see great provision in God's creation. So that was another thing I love to study from orbit, is the provision that we find in Earth. I've already talked about the atmosphere and the water cycle, and it's obvious to us, but it's helpful for us to remember this. We also get great provision out of the earth itself. Obviously, the first order is food. These are grain fields north of Paris. And you can see in the patterns, you can see the part of where in the earth you are. You see elements of history. If you know the history of the area, it's unique in color and pattern. This checkerboard is up in Washington State. It's forestry operations. Apparently they do forestry in square miles. I never knew this, but very incredible and unique looking from space. You see, human activity is another way to say this, reaping the resources out of God's creation. This unique pattern is in South America. 5 mile or so squares. For some reason, I don't know